evening, everyone. It is a rainy night in Fitchburg on this October 12th, and I will call to order this meeting of Fitchburg's Transportation and Transit Commission. We have six. Commissioner David Wilborn is not yet here, but we do have a quorum. Under call to order, we would like to welcome our newest member, Gabriella Gerhardt, who is a member of the Plan Commission, and they have sent her to us. And so we'll start with you and just say a couple sentences of anything you want us to know about you, except you are not allowed to mention four-leaf clover.
So I know many of you already, but I'm Gabriella Gerhardt. I am an alder, been an alder since April 2020, and was on Transmission Transit for 3 years. So really, really love this committee. Really excited to be back. Climate change is a huge issue for me, so making sure that we design our transit system to accommodate those future changes is a huge part of why I'm on council. So really excited to be back with you.
Welcome back. Welcome. We'll go with, I think we'll skip Bill because you know Bill well. You know the other Bill.
Which Bill? I know both Bills.
You know me too.
I think she knows all of us.
Go ahead.
You were here when you were here before.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, okay. I'm like, we were both here when she was.
Oh, okay. You,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You too?
Yep.
Yep.
Well then, Ross.
I'm Ross. I'm a transportation engineer.
Nice to see
Ross
you.
is our second newest member.
Fabulous.
He is our staff support, and we are glad to have it. All right, is everybody here a member of the public for an agenda item? Okay.
Agenda?
Yeah, on the agenda?
Yeah.
Yes, you're here for agenda items. I do need you to fill out each of you fill out one of those forms. I will excuse the mayor from doing that. But otherwise, that way we'll know who you are and what agenda item you're here for. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as proposed.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay,
I have a suggestion.
there's a suggestion. Yes.
I wanted to move move up discussion of transit study, RFP. I want to make sure that it stays at the top of our attention and it's not lost. All
Okay.
the other discussion. So I'd like to take that up early in our meetings and make sure we're giving it adequate time.
Can I interpret your motion to be to take 8B before 8A? Would that
No, it would be to take 8B before 7.
approval of minutes? Oh, okay. I feel like we should, okay. Is there a second? To make that change?
Yeah, I can second.
Okay.
Discuss it.
By way of discussion, I think that we should do our council items as a high priority, and I do believe that they won't take too long, but I would like to hear anybody else's view about making that change in the agenda. Any other?
My question would be who the members of the public are here for. I feel like we should take whatever things they want
Okay.
first, so they don't have to hang out.
Well, our metro presentation is
By the way,
first.
that's why I suggested before 7, so that it's following the presentation by our guests.
Yep.
So
So,
Rana Frada is here for
7A. Yep. And,
Oh, yeah, we can impose on her.
yeah, we'll pull that last. And I don't have your registration slip. Which item are you here for?
I'm Liz Cameron, I'm here for the BRT presentation as well.
Okay, all right. So,
So should I fill this out?
yes, go ahead.
Okay, still fill it out.
You can put both of your names on one sheet if you
Okay.
like. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So we have 2 visitors for 4A and 1 visitor for 7A. Other discussion? I am always reluctant to move things up because I'm always worried that someone will come on the Zoom or tune in on FACT or show up at our meeting expecting something to be later in the agenda. So that's my constant reluctance, but I certainly see Bill's point that he wants us to make sure that we cover that.
I wanna make sure it's covered too, but what I would support is moving into 8A and do.
Moving it before 8A, all right. I'll take that as an amendment. Is there a second to the amendment? Okay. Any discussion on the amendment of moving it up to between 7B and 8A?
It's fine with me.
Oh, okay. Then all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All in favor of the main motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we are going to go 7A, B, 8B, and then 8A. All right. As amended, all in favor of approving the, oh, I guess we just did that. Okay. So we welcome our representatives from Madison Metro, and come up to the table and introduce yourselves and tell us what's happening with the north-south BRT line.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm Mike Czechvala from City of Madison Metro Transit, here to talk about north-south BRT.
And I'm Liz Callan. I work for the City of Madison Department of Transportation, and I'm also supporting the BRT study.
Very good. And your roles?
I'm the project manager for north-south BRT.
And I'm a planner. I'm just
Okay.
kind of mostly supporting the public outreach efforts.
Okay, in the planning department?
And
Very
I actually am Department of Transportation.
Okay, that's right.
City of Madison Department.
Yes, City of Madison, yeah.
And everybody, I think, here understands that Madison Metro is also a department of the City of Madison. And you operate in Fitchburg and other jurisdictions by bilateral agreement. All right, take it away.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Mike Czechvala again, project manager for the North-South Bus Rapid Transit. It's October 12th. City of Fitchburg's Transportation Transit Commission, and we'll get right into it here. So presentation overview, we just have a few items here. We'll talk about what is BRT. Some of you may know that already, but we'll go through it quickly. A little bit about why we're doing the North-South BRT project, and BRT again stands for Bus Rapid Transit. Talk about a little bit about cost and funding, a little bit about timeline, and then some initial concepts for the north-south BRT route in Fitchburg. So this presentation will essentially mirror what we will be showing to the public on November 9th, pending input from this committee. So what is Bus Rapid Transit? Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT, is a high-quality bus-based transit system that delivers fast, comfortable, cost-effective service on a high-use bus route. So what does that really mean? How is BRT different from your standard bus route? There are a couple of key differences that are shown in the bullet points there. Direct routes with fewer stops, a frequent all-day service every 15 minutes typically throughout most of the day, bus-only lanes on all or some of the route, branded stations and buses, transit signal priority. In our case, we'll have articulated electric buses and a faster fare payment system. So all of this is designed to have service that's faster, more frequent, and delivers more of a light rail-like experience to riding the bus. But it's more cost-effective because it uses buses and, for the most part, existing streets. So who is building the Bus Rapid Transit system, the North-South BRT system? So that would be us. We are Metro Transit in the City of Madison. As was mentioned, the City of Fitchburg is part of the Metro Transit system. We operate in Fitchburg through an agreement. So the BRT project will be built by the City of Madison. The majority of the line will be in the City of Madison, and we'll have a couple miles of the line will be in the City of Fitchburg. We have a couple of partners that will be helping us build this system. The City of Fitchburg, a valued partner, as well as Dane County, which has jurisdiction over part of Fish Hatchery Road, the Greater Madison MPO, Wisconsin Department of Transportation, and the Federal Transit Administration, which will be providing some funding for the project. What you're seeing here is a picture of the groundbreaking for the east-west bus rapid transit system. So north-south will be the second BRT system in the region. Getting straight into it, this is the proposed map of the BRT system. This has been designed over the better part of a decade. The system was envisioned to be essentially two routes: the east-west route, which is shown there as Route A, and then the north-south route, which is what we'll be talking about, Route B, shown in green. And then we also have some service on the west side that's part of the east-west system that will also reach into the city of Middleton as well. But again, this is Route B. Route B was essentially established earlier this year as part of a separate project called Transit Network Redesign. So the route with its frequent service essentially has existed since June of 2023. And so the North-South BRT project will build the running way and stations for Route B. The buses will actually be procured for it this year and in 2024 as part of the east-west BRT system. So what does it mean building running way and stations? What exactly does that mean? Other than using buzzwords and bullet points here? Well, this is what it looks like. This is part of the east-west bus rapid transit system that's currently under construction in Madison. East-west BRT runs from approximately West Town Mall to East Town Mall through University Avenue, UW Campus, Capitol Square, the Isthmus, East Washington. These are two stations that are sort of nearing completions. You can see the red lanes there, on the left at High Point Station. That's at High Point and Mineral Point. So those red lanes will become bus-only lanes, and then the platform that you see there will become the station. The platform is what we call the concrete raised section where people stand and wait for the bus or get off the bus. That's at an elevation of 13.5 inches, so that's about even with the floor of the bus. So that, again, delivering that more comfortable rail-like feel, getting on and off the bus without that step. And then the canopy there will keep you dry when it's raining, like it is today. That's under construction. You can see the one on the right at Eau Claire Station still has a hole in the middle. That'll be a sunroof to let some natural light in. And then we'll have benches and some other real-time signs and some other amenities that haven't been completed yet on these stations. So this is essentially what we're building on east-west, and north-south is anticipated to look pretty similar. Just a little bit more about why we're anticipating this expansion of the BRT system to the north-south line: convenience, reliability, comfort, equity, access, environment, and safety. Convenient, again, with that service every 15 minutes throughout most of the day on weekdays and about 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturdays. Convenient features like all-door boarding, fewer delays, real-time bus arrival information at stations. Reliability, the dedicated bus-only lanes reduce that schedule variability. Signal priority makes the service more reliable. Comfort, as I mentioned before, enhanced stations with the shelter, light, heat, and seating. Near-level boarding, so you don't have that step up. Modern electric 60-foot buses starting in 2024. So this picture here is a rendering of what the stations will look like when they're complete. So you can see some of the elements that you saw in the construction photos, but you know, this has the glass for the shelter, it has the seating, it has the sign that has the station name, which in this one is just station name, of course. So that's kind of the vision. One thing to note, we get asked a lot, how are the buses supposed to serve these stations in the middle of the street? The answer is they have doors on both sides of the bus. Talk a little bit about equity. The north-south line will serve a significant number of low-income people, including 31,000 people living in poverty within half mile of the proposed route. And we also have about 33,000 people of color living within a half mile of the route. The route is also served by general density along basically the entire route. I should probably go through the route here just briefly. In Fitchburg, we're basically along Fish Hatchery Road from roughly McKee Road up to the Beltline or Badger Road, then Badger Road over to Park Street. It'll follow Park Street up towards the UW campus, go through the Capitol Square and Isthmus, and then branch off at North Street and go up Packers Avenue, and then continue northwest along Northport. So that's the basic BRT route. Access, like I said, many people living in close proximity along the BRT route, both in Madison and Fitchburg. So improving access for those people to jobs, healthcare, and other destinations wherever they may be going. Talk about the environment a little bit. North-South BRT will use battery electric buses. So they will be 100% battery powered for propulsion, hopefully reducing the region's reliance on fossil fuels, not only by shifting from diesel fuel to battery electric buses, but also providing that attractive service that gives people a better alternative to driving their cars.
And parking. And no exhaust fumes.
All good things. Safety, part of this project will include a full reconstruct along a part of Park Street. And so with that, we will make not only improvements, some of those same improvements that are along the corridor, but we'll also make improvements to Park Street for people biking and walking and improving access to the stations. So let's talk about funding sources a little bit. A large proportion of the capital costs for building the stations and running way will be federal funding. Most of that comes from what's called a small starts grant. That is part of the FTA's CIG, or Construction Improvement Grants program. Within CIG is the small starts grant. We will be applying for a small starts grant to provide a significant amount of funding for the project. We're anticipating about 80% total federal funding, and then a 20% local match. So where are we anticipating the 20% local match will come from? A part of it will come from City of Madison's capital budget. A part of it is going to be from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. That is money that was set aside for improvements to Park Street that is being rolled into the project. So rather than having them do the repairs to the pavement on Park Street, we are rolling that funding into the reconstruction project. Local tax incremental financing and the City of Fitchburg. So thank you. As I mentioned, we've been talking about BRT for quite a while. There has been planning ongoing since roughly 2012, when a report was published by the Greater Madison MPO, or the Madison Area Transportation Planning Board at that time. So that plan basically laid out that north-south and east-west line. Since then, we have been starting with the east-west line and building that, and so the overall timeline for the north-south line begins basically right now in 2023. We'll have a couple years of planning, environmental review, and design, anticipating construction in 26 and 27, and then having the system open for service in 2027. I'll just say ahead of time, this is a very optimistic timeline. We are going to try to stick to it, but sometimes these things slip, especially with federal funding.
I'm sorry, this is the north-south part, not the east-west.
This is north-south, so everything from 2023 to 2027 is north-south.
Okay.
I'll just touch on east-west. East-west, this process that we're in now started around 2018. It wrapped and has been under construction since basically fall of 2022, and is anticipated to open in 2024, the end of next year. So north-south is about 3 years behind it. Okay. So we do have a couple upcoming public meetings. As you may have noticed, there's a significant amount of the north-south BRT line has been improved already through the Isthmus in downtown Madison with the east-west line. So that makes the north side and south side somewhat disconnected from each other from a planning perspective. So we will be having one meeting in South Madison, another meeting in North Madison, a meeting November 9th in Fitchburg. And then we'll also have a virtual public meeting on November 8th for people who can't attend or don't want to attend in person.
While he goes to the next slide, I'm just going to point out that the Fitchburg meeting is in partial conflict with this meeting, and we will discuss what to do with that on our discussion item on BRT later in the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Now we're getting to the section where we'd like to talk about initial concepts in Fitchburg. So some of this can get kind of complicated. We'd like to kind of focus by thinking about things in terms of the route. In other words, where does the bus line go? The route was essentially established by the transit network redesign process, which implemented Route B in June of 2023. So we can make changes to that, but that's kind of the starting point. The stations, I'm going to show you some initial concepts for stations and the running way. So the running way, again, is the bus lanes, how they're configured, if it is bus lanes or mixed traffic, and then also other improvements to the street, such as pedestrian crossings, traffic signals, that kind of thing.
I assume you're going to cover mostly the south part of the route tonight.
We will be focusing on Fitchburg. So one thing that we'd like to get out ahead of we get this question asked a lot, can these things be changed? Yes, we are at the very, very beginning of this. We have several years of things that we're building on, but we are very much open to changing things. We'd like to hear input. That is why we're going out to the public at this early stage. We do have to start somewhere, so we are showing you some things that we've put together, but we'd like to hear feedback on that, and we'd like to have discussions about what works and what doesn't work. So thinking in those terms about the route, we would like to respect the work that was done with Transit Network Redesign that implemented Route B, but we are open to thinking about relatively minor changes, including particularly the ends of the line. Stations. Spacing for BRT stations is generally about a half mile apart, so that's kind of the starting point. A little bit less frequent than your typical bus stop spacing. It's intended to serve high ridership areas, both dense in terms of where people live, but also destinations where they may be going, and also thinking about connections to neighborhoods that people might be walking in that would want to catch the bus there. Pedestrian crossings also need to be considered, and then running way. And so we will be implementing bus lanes where feasible. Sometimes it's feasible and sometimes it isn't. In a lot of cases it's actually quite feasible, including on Fish Hatchery Road where they already exist. And improvements, thinking about other improvements to other modes where applicable as we think about these things. So now I'm going to go ahead and start showing maps. This is where it gets good. So we're going to focus on Fitchburg today, as I had said earlier. I think this section of Fish Hatchery Road south of the Beltline can be essentially split up into three sections. I'll start on the north side, which is somewhat in Madison, but that's fine. So we'll be on Badger Road between Park Street and Fish Hatchery. That'll be mixed traffic. Badger Road is a street that has one lane in each direction, so there's really not significant opportunities for bus lanes. We're anticipating a station near Park and Badger, which is essentially the south transfer point. And then we're anticipating another station essentially on the other side of Badger Road, at somewhere near Badger and Fish Hatchery. As we turn south and go down Fish Hatchery Road, crossing the Beltline, we'll essentially use that bridge and that roadway as it exists. We will look at some targeted improvements to make it easier for buses to go over that bridge, and thinking about how they mix with traffic going onto and off of the Beltline. But we do think that we can implement some bus lanes over part of that interchange. From Greenway to the south, that's what I would consider kind of the central part of Fish Hatchery Road in Fitchburg. That is a section of fish hatchery that was recently reconstructed. It essentially maintained its prior cross-section of having 2 travel lanes in each direction, plus a shared bus and bike lane, and then also added some sidewalk, pedestrian, and bicycle facilities on the side of it. So our anticipation is that we will maintain those bus lanes on that section. One of the major questions that we'll be thinking about is, should those bus lanes stay on the right or should they move to the left? Fish Hatchery Road is essentially identical, not identical, but it's very similar to Mineral Point Road on the west side of Madison. Mineral Point Road had that similar cross-section, and we are moving the bus lanes from the right to the left. So why would we do that? It eliminates conflicts with between both buses and bikes, also right turns, trucks and other vehicles that might use that right lane for a short period of time. Essentially eliminates all of those conflicts.
Yes, I interrupt, Mike. One of the things that you see people talk about all the time is, well, why are they putting the stations on the median? It's so dangerous to cross over there. And I just want to point out that if you have the side running instead of center running lanes, then you don't have to cross when you go to work, but you have to cross both lanes or both directions of traffic when you come home, or vice versa. Whereas with center running, you're going to have to cross one direction of traffic going one way and the other going the other way. So the amount of crossing of the busy traffic lanes is exactly the same, whether it's center running or side running.
Yeah, that's a good point, and well put. The other question that we sometimes get is, will there be traffic signals? On a street like Fish Hatchery Road, all of these stations will be at traffic signals. So you would essentially use the push button or the traffic signal to cross half of the street to get to the median, the same way you'd use the walk signal to cross all the way across.
Are you envisioning transit-only signals, the white bars?
We are.
That's a design detail.
It's a design detail.
Yeah.
Essentially, the bus goes with the traffic though, so it's really more that in some cases the bus is kind of off to the side, and so they're not really directly controlled by a green light.
Mm-hmm.
So then when they're off to the side like that, we give them the horizontal vertical bar.
Can you speak to the conflicts in center and side running with left and right turns?
Sure. Yeah, so on Mineral Point Road, which is probably a very similar example again, there's a couple different ways you can do it. One option would be to eliminate the left turn so that there are no conflicts between left turns and transit. There are limited cases where you can actually do that. We're doing that in a couple places on East Washington Avenue where we have a good grid system where people can just turn left before or after and then go around the block. On Fish Hatchery Road, I don't think that would be doable because of the street network and how, a lot of these are pretty major streets where you have to turn left depending on where you're going. So in that case, there are basically 2 different ways you can do it. In one way, which we would probably do, is we would have the left turns, what I call feather across the bus lane. So you'd have the bus lane would be open to buses and left turns for a while. And then, so if you're turning left, you'd merge into the bus lane. And then when the left turn lane opens up, you merge left again into the left turn and then make a left turn for normal. There's another way you can do it where you can keep the bus lane entirely separate of the left turns. So the buses stay to the left of the left turns. And in that case, you have to have completely separate phases for the buses and the left turns. So in that case, if you think about it, if you're making a left turn and it's just a green ball, there'd be no way to know that there'd be a bus coming from behind you. So we separate those movements completely with the traffic signals.
For left turns, what about the putting the station on the far side of the intersection, going both directions?
Right, so it's kind of that first option is what we would do if the station is on the far side. So we would have, if the station is on the far side of the intersection, you would
Oh, where
merge into
you-
the bus lane and then merge into the left turn.
They go through. Okay.
Yep.
We have really bad compliance on Fish Hatchery Road today with non-buses being in the bus lane. Come over the belt line and they're going to turn right in McKee Road, and they decide that that means that they can go in the bus lane all the way south because they're going to eventually turn right.
Mhm.
And I see that as a big advantage of center running, is that that's less of a problem.
Yeah, I think it's less of a problem. It's, the way to really eliminate that is to have a barrier of some type, which that gets quite a bit more complicated. So we are not doing that on the rest of the corridor, but that's another way to exclude that traffic entirely. Let's talk about the stations in that section. We have shown a station at Greenway Cross, Post Road and High Ridge. Again, these stations, this is preliminary, this is what we've kind of put out. And we'll look at an aerial photo in a second, which I think will show kind of why those intersections stand out to us as potential station locations. But before we do that, let's go ahead and move to the third and last section that's shown on this map for what's envisioned at this point of the north-south BRT line. We are showing a slight deviation off of Fish Hatchery Road onto Cahill, Maine. And the reason for that is to get closer to that kind of neighborhood center that's up the hill there. It's towards the end of the line. It's a relatively low penalty deviation in terms of time. That is essentially where Route B currently ends today. We are also showing this line being extended essentially one more station to McKee. So the terminal that we're showing is on Triverton Pike and McKee, which is just west of McKee and Fish Hatchery. Those are the final two stations on Cahill, Maine and at McKee.
Because I disagree to end the lane there. I want to come here to see the campus. If we're gonna do and planning to invest the money that we're gonna invest. Because we need to bring the people here to the library, to the civic campus, to the community center. So the idea is something that I want to mention in the discussion, but so that one is a preliminary plan. You know, if we can, the idea is to bring this to Lacey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about.
Okay.
This is preliminary what we've laid out. As you can see here from the aerial photo, I think we'd gain a lot by extending it one more station to McKee, but there's also a lot south of McKee. There's a cost to extending the line, but there's also a benefit to extending the line. We also want to kind of think about the future and have a line that's essentially complete. It's not very effective to extend it piecemeal.
Yeah.
These are all kinds of pros and cons and trade-offs, but yes, that's very much something we'd be open to discussing. But I'm getting towards the end here. Just looking at the line, this is the north-south line is the red line, more or less over Fish Hatchery Road on this aerial photo. So again, you can see, looking at the station at Greenway, we have, it's a commercial node. We're serving pedestrian access to the east and west, to neighborhoods east and west of the route, similar to Post. And then at High Ridge and Cahill, we had looked at having, essentially one station serving that whole area or two. At this point, we're showing two at High Ridge and Cahill with that deviation onto Cahill, Maine. And then, as you can see, by extending it a little bit to the south, at least we'll get that station at McKee, which will serve that commercial corridor at McKee. Talking about the terminal a little bit more, these will be electric buses, and so we'd like to have electric charging at the end of the line. And so we've kind of identified that as one possible place where we could end the line and potentially have off-street charging.
Mike, the loop at the McKee station, do I understand that that is a clockwise loop?
You understand correctly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and the reason for that would be because we cannot make a left turn onto a busy road if there's not a traffic signal.
Right.
And so that's essentially 3 right turns, and the eastbound left at McKee and Fish Hatchery is fine, but the right turns at unsignalized intersections are much easier for us than the left turns.
So
Now
what is the street when you're coming back to McKee? What is the name of that one, Steve?
Brendan? Is that?
I think
Oh, it's Brendan and Treverton Pike.
Yes.
And then-
No, I know. You know, the one that is this one, that one,
Oh.
what is that one?
It's Brendan.
That's, yeah, Brendan Avenue.
And do you think that you're gonna fit these type of buses there?
Yeah,
It's pretty wide.
yeah, we can fit on most streets.
But most of the people park there on the side of the, you know.
Well,
Not
we
in
went,
that stretch
Yeah,
though,
so
Okay.
not in that very stretch.
that's like along the,
The
shopping
apartments
center.
that you're thinking of are farther
They park
south.
closer, far past Treverton Pike, but I drive that every day. There's very few cars parked in that stretch.
I do see, Mike, that you are turning left from Fish on the northeastbound route. You're turning left onto Cahill, Maine. Do you envision as part of this signalizing that intersection?
let's see, so you'll have to remind me exactly where the traffic signals are. I think they're at the,
So there is
That one there
traffic,
right now.
so there are 3 entrances to Hatchery Hill. This one is the only signalized
that's
one.
signalized, and so we
And
can make.
these 2 are right in, right out.
Yes, okay, so the one on the south is fine the way it is because we're making that northbound left off of Fish Hatchery, that's fine. And then the eastbound right on is also fine. High Ridge, we would anticipate as traffic signal, not because we need it for bus operations, but because people would need it to cross the street
And,
to get to the station.
If this becomes signalized, then it could be changed, reconstructed so that it's a full access instead of right in, right out. Because the reason that these are right in, right out today is because of the economies of not signalizing the intersection and feeling that we have one possible exit. But that would, for example, shorten routes for people and so on.
It could be, yep.
There's a question that, I have the same question, so turning on to Cahill going north, that, would you have to reconstruct in there, cause that left turn lane right now is about 3 cars long. I mean, like, cause that's the turn to go to Pick and State basically, right?
Yep.
Coming from the north, that's like 3 cars, I mean, that gets backed up with cars into the main road.
We need to take a look at those kinds of things, we might need to extend it a little bit, I don't know.
Well, and how precise are can the buses be, like, or how dynamic can we make the signal at High Ridge Trail so that when a bus is making a left onto Cahill, Maine, High Ridge Trail, or, you know, the Fish Hatchery Road has a red light at that point.
There are some tricks like that that you can do with signal timing and coordination between the signals. It's usually kind of never perfect, but there are some tricks like that you can do.
And that is an intelligent traffic system corridor that was created when the Beltline was under construction and all the traffic was coming down McKee and Fish Hatchery some years ago. So they do have the ability to coordinate signals along there.
And just to jump in, a lot of these questions are kind of maybe a little bit beyond the scope of the planning phase that we're in right now.
Design.
Yeah, a lot of these can be figured out in design based on what we figure out we want here.
Yeah, again, I think, you know, thinking about the key questions that we're asking, the route, the stations, and the running way. So, you know, we're always willing to get into more detail, but, you know, those are the kind of the main things we'd like to focus on if we could.
Deviating on the Cahill Maine makes a lot of sense. I'm glad that that's the change. And then I know that we should talk more about bringing the route further south, but bringing it down to McKee does make a huge difference because crossing Fish Hatchery Road really is a barrier to access. There's a lot of senior living apartments in that area, and making it all the way down to Cahill, Maine is a huge barrier for a lot of individuals. But if there was a station on Treverton Pike and McKee, there was a lot more people that would be able to access that. So it opens up a lot of possibilities.
So if we were to extend it farther south than this, we'd probably wanna just stay on Fish Hatchery and just go straight down Fish Hatchery to east to Sherrill or Lacey or wherever the terminal would be, but we wouldn't do that loop onto Trevorton Pike.
So would there be a station at McKean?
There'd be a station somewhere in that area,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
There'd be a
I can
station somewhere
imagine
in
the
there.
station being at Brendan.
Yes, it could.
And Brendan would be the pedestrian route for the population you're talking
Oh,
about. And one of the things that is important about BRT is that it fosters real estate development, which generates taxes, which helps pay for it. And one of the things about this corridor is that through some of the area, there is no opportunity for development because we've got wetlands and protected lands. And I think that's a key reason, for example, to deviate into Cahill, Maine, because the opposite side is the protected land of the fish hatchery, which is not going to get high-rise apartments in any time, ever. So that makes a lot of sense.
Are you coordinating, like, with B-Cycle? I think every one of these stations ought to have B-Cycle docks so that, you know, rather than having strictly a walk shed, we have a walk bike shed.
We are coordinating with B-Cycle to an extent. They are to some degree behind us, but we meet with them regularly, and so they've been following our BRT plans for quite some time, and so they are looking for opportunities to have, as they expand, to be close to the BRT system.
They're way more flexible.
They're more flexible.
You put a station here, then they can put bikes there.
And I think that's something we could also kind of champion internally with our B-Cycle efforts as well.
Do you want to talk about the area south of Brendan, or shall we come back to you with something about that? I mean, you've heard from the mayor, and I'll tell you now that I feel the same way, that we do want to go to Fish Hatchery and Research Park, or Fish Hatchery and, Lacey and Research Park, or East Sherrill and Fish, or, you know, and you'll have a similar type turnaround loop there, and perhaps none at Trevorton Pike. So when should Fitchburg bring that proposal, and how baked does it have to be for you?
I think we can work with you to bake it, so to speak.
On the staff level?
Yeah, on the
Okay.
staff level. I think we'll take input at any time. I think I'll take that back today as we're hearing support for that. So I mean, I'm not taking a head count, but I'm hearing heads nod, I'm seeing heads nod.
Well, we'll take a vote later.
But yeah, so I will just say that there are, and I'm not trying to dissuade you from this or anything, but there are costs associated with that. There's a capital cost, and then there's the operating cost of pushing it down. We'll also need to look at how it fits into our small starts grant, so that it remains cost effective, but none of that.
Might need more buses for a longer route.
Yeah, the capital expenses,
Yep.
so it's essentially probably one extra bus.
Just a thought, one of the things that has to happen, or should happen, I think, is that whoever picks up this grant, does our little study, looking at this issue of extending rapid transit or mass transit down to this area. Whoever gets that grant needs to be engaged with you, and I don't know how to make that happen, but somebody should be thinking about that, how.
The transit study RFP?
Yeah, somehow they have to get connected, so their report, it makes an intelligent reflection of the opportunities and needs that
We'll
exist.
put it in the RFP.
Yeah, I'd suggest that would be a good thing for staff to make that bridge and make that part of the actual proposal, yeah.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say, like, in terms of pushing down to Lacey, like, is there a possibility that if we could not get BRT down to Lacey, that we could integrate just a regular bus route system to pull people further down?
Yeah, there are some of those opportunities. So for example, Route 65, I'm just gonna go back to the map here quick. So Route 65 is a peak hour only route that goes, that basically goes to this area. So one option would be to expand that to be an all-day route that would, in theory, be lower cost because it's a lower frequency route and it already exists in the rush hour, so you'd just be adding the midday, evening, and weekend service. And perhaps that route, should come up and meet this route here. We're also looking at different ways to provide east-west transit service in the city of Fitchburg. So that would essentially be like Route 75 along McKee, and then that part of Route 65 along East Sherrill. One convenient part of this terminal of getting it at least down to McKee is that it accommodates that vision a little bit more. You could envision a route starting at McKee and Fish Hatchery and going west along McKee, or going south and east along East Sherrill or Lacey or wherever. And so bringing it one more stop down, it feels like it gives us more opportunities for that kind of thing in the future. That's part of this one station extension. But yes, there are other ways. There are other even more complicated things like extending every other trip. So for example, you might get every service every 30 minutes instead of every 15 minutes, which would be more cost effective. That gets very complicated, but we're very open to looking at those kinds of things.
One of the objectives of BRT is to foster transit-oriented development. And one of the important things about this Fitchburg Center Civic Campus area is undeveloped land that could support dense apartments like the ones you've seen farther north in Fish Hatchery, but also commercial employment centers. And some of them have been languishing here for many years, in part because of no all-day transit. And so I feel while it's very important to have regular bus service that connects off to the west and off to the current to the east, especially with all the new apartments in the northeastern part of the city, for me it's very important that the service to this area be BRT for the development effects.
For the future development.
For what?
For the future development of the south part of the city. We
Yep.
need to think with that. We need to think with that vision too, that eventually the density is going to move south. You know what I mean? So.
Yes, but according to the comp plan, it will not move south in this corridor. It will move south in the eastern corridor.
Wait until next year.
I'll defend the comprehensive plan. That would be smarter to go south along the Sayin corridor.
I'll just put a plug in for Lacey. We did ask in the Beltline study that they move the park and ride down here. So I think moving BRT to where the park and ride is makes sense. And then I'm wondering if at all, you're working with WISDOT as they look at the Beltline corridor, and you talked about the BRT will pull cars off the road, and how you're kind of talking to them about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So we are working with WISDOT on that and other projects. One thing with the Beltline is they've asked us to identify our priorities for transit. And we've said very clearly that our priorities for transit are crossing the Beltline at Fish Hatchery Road and also at Mineral Point Road. Those are our two highest priorities.
How does the reconnection of Perry Street across the Beltline into the Stewart Street industrial neighborhood affect this route? Would it not be better to have a station at Sayin and Stewart rather than at Badger and Fish?
That is a good question. I think those are some things that we could look into. There are essentially two routes. The route on here, the blue route on this map is Route H. Route H and Route B essentially follow the same path from Greenway and Fish Hatchery up to what's now the south transfer point at Park Street and Badger. I think that what would make sense would be to have one of those routes use Greenway and then go up Perry Street to the south transfer point to provide service within there. Whether it's Route B or Route H, I don't know, but I think one of them would make sense.
I think that's a good thought. And for those that are not familiar, here's Sayin here, and this is Perry Street. And
This is general heating and air conditioning, a huge facility there. But it's long been a goal to connect the east side of the city up to the Park Street corridor, and that connection would be there. And that is in the Beltline PEL study as a high priority project. But again, we're talking 2050.
One thing I just wanted to note about the extension south, just a few things we would wanna look at because it kind of goes into the Federal Transit Administration grant rating would be like the density around and also the projected density because that's gonna build into the ridership estimates. So as part of that competitive grant program, they're looking at all the projects and they're saying, you know, how cost effective is this in terms of like how many riders are you getting and what is the density like along the routes around the stations. They do look at like different demographics as well, like are you serving communities that are depending on transit and different things like that. So I think, you know, when we do take it back and start looking at some of those areas, those are just some of the things that I think we'll be looking at right off the bat, or just like not just residential density though, but also job and destination density. So like transit, you know, places where people would want to take transit to or from.
We're good down here in terms of employment centers.
Yeah.
But the business about serving existing populations and even destinations cuts the opposite way as putting BRT where you want to foster development. So the feds are not interested. Is that a non-goal for them?
No, I think that certainly is a
Okay.
goal, and I think one of the things too along this route is because it is a long route, it's covering the north, you know, very kind of diverse areas of kind of our region, is that it's important to connect to those job centers. So you are connecting to a lot of residential areas, you know, is this a path to bring people to some jobs down here where they may or may not have access to currently? So is it kind of expanding access to jobs?
Yeah, because in the north part of the corridor, we don't have jobs, we have density, people, and the jobs are here.
And all those individuals in the North Fish Hatchery Road neighborhood, they don't have access to Fitchburg city services because they cannot get down here on the bus. And obviously the library, the city hall, and then the farmers markets over here, all those different businesses. So I think part of the benefit is not so much the density in these areas, but it's actually bringing the density of our population to the place where things exist in Fitchburg already.
Including the senior center, and
Yes.
obviously that's a population that is transit dependent.
Yeah, thanks to Promega, the employment has shown crazy growth in this area. And that's expected to continue because of the supply of land and the health of those companies.
Can I follow up on your comment about WISDOT?
Yeah.
Do you have suggestions about things that you have in mind related to that project? So like with this study or other transit related items with the Beltline study?
Yeah, well, we put in the, that we want the parking ride lower, but we also did oppose any capacity expansion. And I think the fact that this would help take cars off the road that would potentially use the Beltline, I think would be good for them to know as they consider whether or not to expand it, you know, to add a lane.
Okay.
And I think they want to add a lane on the west side, which I would recommend you look at if you're worried about crossing Mineral Point Road, because I think they want to make that even wider where all of their options, yeah.
Other questions or suggestions for?
I have a very
Mike and
easy
Liz?
question. Will this be online eventually, this presentation, after the November 9th? Or is there a way we can get it?
Yeah, I can send it out to
Okay.
everybody after this.
But to answer your question, we normally don't put committee meetings on our website because in the city of Madison, they go up on Legistar, and I don't know what system you have here. But for our public input meetings, like the 4 coming up, we do put those up on our website. I'll just kind of end with this here. We have a website dedicated to BRT, madisonbrt.com. So you will find those presentations on our website after we have those meetings. We also have an email, brt@cityofmadison.com. Those emails go directly to people like myself and Liz, and we read all of them and we respond and get back to anybody who has questions or comments. We also have email updates. Right now, if you get email updates, you'll, I think we have one for construction updates for east-west, I think we'll have a separate one for planning for north-south.
One comment in regards to the meeting on November 9th, the public hearing. One of the ironies of having it at City Hall is that you cannot access City Hall by bus. And then people that are riding the bus lines that would be affected by this cannot access City Hall. Has there been any consideration of moving it to a different place?
The school could be, Leopold School could be a nice place.
Oh, yeah. Somewhere that people that are riding the bus can actually.
Because we can drive there, but some of those people, they cannot come here, you know what I mean, like, and maybe do it bilingual too.
It would be a little ironic to go to Leopold because that is in the city of Madison. Another possibility might be the ballroom of one of the two hotels on the corner,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
where particularly the one that we use for a polling place is bigger at the Wyndham
I
Suites.
have to pay for it. Here they don't have to pay.
Yeah.
We don't have to pay, they do.
Well, they have a budget for public engagement. Instead of running an extra bus down to City Hall, which is something that we tried for a meeting years ago, I remember, that might be cost effective.
There's also community rooms at some of the bigger apartment buildings. So the Fairways has one, the
sure.
Highline has one. If you'd be open to using one of those, I know the Fairways in particular, that one is fairly big.
And we've had community meetings there before.
I was just gonna say that we are having the Madison ones at the Urban League and at Warner Park Community Center. So I didn't know if there's anything somewhat similar, but maybe the apartment
We
community
have
center.
great plans for a community
Yeah,
center.
one way. I mean, right down here, like, obviously, I'm sure.
It's got.
Well, there will be a park shelter built next year.
Okay.
That's in that Fish Hatchery Road
Okay,
neighborhood.
okay,
That would be
okay.
great for this, but
Okay.
it doesn't exist yet,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah, we'll look into those options. Yeah, that would be good to have it not accessible by transit, so.
Well, if there's nothing else, on behalf of our commission and the residents of the city, thank you for coming down and sharing. Can you tell us, as you leave, how much of this we will see again if we come a month from tonight?
On November 9th, you'll see probably basically the same presentation as I would
Okay,
guess.
and then what will the rest of will there be charrette-style meetings or?
Yeah, we're actually formatting more like an open house, so we'll kind of have display boards around the room, and then we're gonna have a few different ways for people to interact. So we'll have options for people to comment on the station locations, and then we'll also have ways, I think we're still kind of figuring out the details, but different ways where people can identify, like if there's pedestrian concerns, or just like different areas on the map that we need to be cognizant of.
But there will be probably a presentation like this one to kick off.
Well, I'll have to
Or
take that
only
back. I
boards.
think we're basically going to have this information on boards and have people just be able to walk through it rather than having to.
Okay. What would your advice for us be about having, so you're going 5:30 to 7:30, we normally go 6:30 to 8:30. Would you advise us to come to the first hour and then meet at our regular time, or push our meeting back so we can attend the whole thing, or what?
We'll have to think about that.
Well, we're gonna make a decision in a half hour, so if you've got anything right now, it would be really good.
I would say the first hour would probably be great if you guys could be there for the first hour, but because it's gonna be more of an open house style, we
Okay.
can field questions.
That's really helpful, thank you very much.
I'd agree. I'd say typically when we do this, we see most people kind of in the first.
And we've had our separate whacks at you too.
Well, and if you have any suggestions that come to you either now or after the meeting, just for us to take into that public meeting as we're, kind of just developing the content a little bit more, anything you want us to focus on or anything, that we should
I
keep
would
in mind.
just, recognizing particularly the cost barrier, but I would put a little bit more into planning what a civic center or Fitchburg Center, which is the area down the hill, extension would look like, and bring that to us. And I think I can speak for everybody here, we'd be really interested in seeing that part of it after you've had a chance to think about it.
So let me ask if we can put something together that at least, shows something some potential there. We add that to this material and bring that, would that be
That would be
at least show
great.
the corridor?
Dash
Yeah,
line or
really like
something
that.
to show that area, yeah.
We've got two members of the Plan Commission in the room tonight. Maybe, you can get together with CETA and maybe come up with some possible future, say, hey, if we've got BRT, this is what this area could look like, rather than people just assuming that it's going to look like this forever and,
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, we've got undeveloped land all around East Sherrill Parkway. We've got WIBA. Antenna field over here is for sale for future development, and that would likely be mid or high-density mixed use. So there's a huge opportunity for both developing and for incenting development with good transportation.
On that point, are the Fitchburg Center people engaged in any of these conversations, and how and what outreach has there been to I mean, they're the owners of that property, right? that
The
we're talking
undeveloped
about.
land.
And it would be healthy if there's gonna be a conversation about extending the line up here and what its implications are for development and opportunities. They should be engaged in that conversation.
What is Bill's last name on their staff? Bill, who's kind of the real estate manager. Not Bill Linton, but one of his.
No, Steve.
Steve Leverance is the one? Yeah, so.
Just to jump in, staff is having conversations with private, maybe not developers, but private
Land.
businesses and landowners
But-
about this extension.
Right,
So-
but because specifically for them, because they are the big landowner, we're talking about property that they own and they're very jealous about what happens to it. They care what happens in
Right.
the Fitchburg Center.
One of the things, for example, is that they have a vision of kind of wide open spaces and infiltrating lots of stormwater and making the springs flow. And that sometimes gets in the way of plans for more efficient use of land. So there's potential conflicts and synergies there. All right then, we thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
But just going back to that, is somebody gonna specifically connect these folks with, is it Leverance or whoever the?
We can make contact, yep. We can add them to our stakeholder list to make contact.
Excellent. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. We are back to approval of the minutes. Can we have a motion to start off?
Full approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Bill? Are there any suggestions for changes or elaborations? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes as submitted, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, those are approved. What do you have for us, Ross?
So in terms of, I'll start off with Metro Transit, because they just
They're here.
left, so now I can talk about them. So we are in the middle of reviewing a proposed new Metro Transit contract. We just signed the previous contract in, I think it was signed in 2022, and it was supposed to run until 2026. So we're less than halfway through that, but due to some audit issues, Metro Transit is interested in changing some things that shouldn't impact Fitchburg very much, but we are reviewing that internally. There's some changes to the paratransit billing, and then how their operating reserve works. That's the particular part that our auditors had an issue with, was actually having an operating reserve, having this fund of money that was kind of just sitting there.
That we owned.
Yes, so,
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that because I was on the Contracted Services Oversight Subcommittee, which created those contracts and solved problems by creating that operating reserve. The problem was is that each year we would find out that we were in the hole or in a surplus situation because of actual operations did not match precisely projections. And so but we were in a position where our budget was already finalized for the year. So the operating reserve idea was to have this fund that each partner had that they could draw on or contribute to smooth those things out. Then there was a second modification to make sure that we were getting the interest on that instead of the city of Madison, and so that got fixed. So what do we want to do now?
There basically won't be a fund of money,
Yeah.
but we will have to adjust we'll basically pay for the next year's service and
Or roll it over?
Yeah, and our payment will adjust up and down based on what we actually were charged the year before for operations.
Okay. All right.
So,
That
but are
makes
we
sense.
gonna be seeing, I assume that these amendments or revisions to the agreement are gonna come through this?
I believe they would, because it's a brand new contract.
There'll be a resolution
Yeah.
to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign it, and it'll be
I
passed
believe
by
so.
council, so it should be referred to us.
Yeah, but it's an accounting issue,
Mhm.
practically, what they're fixing.
Those contracts are all about accounting.
No, yeah.
Mhm. It should hopefully be a minor change,
Yes,
basically, yeah.
Okay, anything else? Lots of other things.
Yeah, and another thing I believe I've touched on before, but we're also talking with Metro Transit about changes to Tier B funding. There's some other Tier B transit systems that would like the state to change how that funding formula works, so we're trying to make sure that any potential changes don't negatively impact Fitchburg, and that has to do with how the federal government and the state government's money is split, because we contract with Metro Transit for transit service. But there have been no changes proposed yet, so we really have no clear picture of what those would be.
Just have
It's
to be
something
vigilant.
we're aware of, yep. At the last meeting of the Greater Madison MPO, they discovered that they were going to be granted additional STBG urban project money. So we had gone through a whole vote on what projects to fund. We're gonna fund all of the projects that had been submitted to the STBG urban grant program, so.
So the additional funds do they have enough projects to consume the additional funds?
They did, yes.
Okay.
It worked out where they basically had to push off a path project to a future year, and that made all the numbers work out there.
Hopefully it wasn't the path that
It wasn't.
connects to
It was in Windsor.
Yeah, okay, I know that one. It wasn't the one between the Cap City Trail and the Glacial Drumlin Trail? Okay,
No.
correct, good.
Then other transportation-related items, street reconstruction project is proceeding, and we are also proceeding with the sidewalk replacement project. Neither one of those have been done in a few years, so they're larger than normal. I also am going to put forward an update to the neighborhood traffic management process. That will be referred out at at the Common Council meeting on October 24th. That will be referred to Board of Public Works and this commission. TTC will see it on November 9th or another date if that meeting moves. And then that'll go back to council on November 14th, or a later council date if TTC does not take it up by that time. Those changes basically reduce the speed threshold that a street needs to meet before it's eligible for NTMP funding. and it reduces the reliance on 85th percentile speeds and also increases the number of roads that are actually eligible for funding through that process.
Did you say what the speed thresholds are going from to?
Yes, so the speed thresholds now are 35 miles an hour for the 85th percentile speed. This is a generalization, there's a few different modifiers in there. And this will reduce it to 30 miles an hour.
So
The
30
85th
miles an
percentiles.
hour and under will be eligible
Correct,
instead of 35 and under.
correct. And that's the 85th percentile speed,
Right,
not the
opposed to
speed
the
limit.
speed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you'll get to see all those changes at your next meeting. Related to the neighborhood traffic management plan, there is a meeting with the Osmondson Road neighborhood, I'll call it, that's on October 18th at Fire Station 1, which is on Lacey Road. That area has had a lot of requests for funding for traffic calming through the NTMP. Right now, they don't meet the current requirements. So we're going to have a neighborhood meeting, explain that, and say these are in the works, and these are the dates you can see the changes, yep. And Osmondson will be eligible for NTMP funding if council approves those changes.
They have pined for a traffic signal at Osmondson and McKee for many, many years, and it is clear that they do not meet warrants and never will. Warrants are their levels of traffic and turning movements that are required to justify traffic signals. But that doesn't make them feel any better when they're trying to get out onto McKee in the morning.
We are also in the middle of a speed limit reduction pilot program. This is kind of running right now in parallel with this commission's Vision Zero efforts. Right now, we are gathering data on Brendan Avenue and Research Park Drive to look at lowering speed limits on both of those roads.
What would it be on Brendan Avenue? Isn't it currently 25?
It is proposed to be lowered to 20 miles an hour
Alright.
on Brendan Avenue by McKee Farms Park. Oh.
Don't confuse me.
We should also lower the speed limit on your cul-de-sac. No, let's go back to business here.
And then
She's the 85th percentile.
I always speed past the traffic counters when I can. No, I'm joking. And then there will also be a no parking ordinance update. The main thing that I think this commission would be concerned about there is it'll add no parking in bike lanes, which I think
Oh,
is
bless you.
prohibited by state law, but we want to add it into our ordinances to make it more clear. So.
Yep, and, never mind.
And that is, I believe, all I have for my staff update.
One question for the staff update, is Lacey west of Seminole on track to open up at the appointed time?
Yes, and that appointed time is November 17th.
It's paved.
That-
Part of it was paved.
Part of it,
All I
from
can see is paved.
Seminole Highway to Commerce Park Drive has binder, the lower layer of asphalt down. And they should be paving the surface there, I believe, next week.
It first stops raining.
Is there
Yeah.
something intentionally different about the multi-use paths around the Lacey Seminole roundabout? It appears to be very rough.
They're porous pavement.
That's what I thought it might be.
So, stormwater can go into the asphalt and infiltrate down into a pipe system that's underneath.
Is that the first time we've ever had one of those?
No, we have them on.
We have it at Lacey by McGaw Park, the north end.
And the parking lot at the library is permeable as well, isn't it?
The back in angle parking.
Mhm.
But I think these are three different mixes,
Mhm.
and that one turned out to be the worst.
that one gets clogged,
Oh.
very easily.
It has to be vacuumed to maintain it.
Which
Well,
is,
I mean, it's got pores, and
Yeah.
pores are gonna fill up with dirt and stuff,
Yeah,
right?
acne.
Can you get a Roomba or something out there?
Yeah, I don't think that random sweeping probably would work very well in traffic.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Ross about staff activities?
I'll just say maybe it's because we didn't have a staff person for so long. I really appreciate how complete your report is. I feel like
Yes,
we haven't had detailed reports. I appreciate it.
terrific. All right, let's move on to 7A. Jay, I believe you're registered for this?
Well,
I
and
think
Mayor,
Jay's for
Jay, are you gonna be on for the speed reduction, right?
Yeah,
Speed reduction, yeah.
he's the main alder on that.
and then
Yes,
the mayor.
that's what he's here for.
Okay, all right.
I'm sure of it.
we can't hear you, Jay, by the way.
Even though you're not muted, we
Yeah.
can
We
hear
saw
you.
your bar.
This is not a shy person. If he wants to be part of it,
Okay,
he will
so
be here.
I have just one member of the public. Your Honor, would you join us at the table and share your thoughts on this matter?
Okay, so I hope you read my email that I sent to you guys today. So I want to explain because there is a lot of misunderstanding and confusion about what I'm trying to do here. When we put together the ARPA and TID closure investment plan, we asked the council members to, and the city staff, they brought a lot of projects. So there are $10 million in projects, but we can also, our fund is almost for $8 million. So there are $2 million of projects that we will never do. Or they're gonna go back to the CIP and who knows when they're gonna be done. So, and looking at all the infrastructure grant money that is available out there, one of the things that when I put together my CIP plan in the letter, I was very specific that in the future, all the bike lines or paved shoulder in rural area, we should be funded with grants. Everything inside the service urban area, we can use levy, debt, whatever. I always gonna, be priority, especially in the healthy neighborhood area, to have bike lanes or paved shoulder, whatever. So as a mayor, I have these limited resources of money, and I have a lot of city priority. And I had to look and determine what are the priorities that maybe are gonna be they're gonna be more difficult to fund, or they're gonna continue being the CIP, waiting to, eventually to have the money to do it. So there are two projects that they are, that they are parks related. One is the Kid Crossing Playground that has been in the CIP for many years. This park is almost 20 years and is gonna become a liability soon. So I am looking also for the safety of the children and the people that they are attend the park. And we have a close incident lately with some volunteer working in the park and got injured. And then the other shelter is in the Tower Hill Park. There is a shelter that people use it a lot, but it's very, very old, very old. It has been in the CIP for many years. When I had the opportunity to tell me, you can move money around and determine what are your priority to use the money that is left in this fund. And because I was in park committee for 2-3 years, and I know this park very well because they are in my district, the district that I represented. I live 2 blocks away from McKeefen Park, so I know how those parks are used. I made the decision to redirect the money from the Welland Road paved shoulder. Steve explained me the difference the other day. So the paved shoulder to fund this project, with the idea that staff can look for grants to fund the Welland Road project. So that one was the idea of this resolution. I am trying to look at this with an equity lens and determine how many people are enjoy and use those park amenities. And also, I know that the bicycle safety is very important. To be honest, I have asked for metric for Welland Road for months. No one has shown me metrics of how many people use that. Most of that people that are biking in that area are recreational. They don't use it to go to work for transport, And if they do it, it's like a very small percentage. So when I put all of this in my equation, and when I made my final decision to how to allocate that. Also in the ARPA teeth closure investment plan, there are $75,000 allocated to a grant, but to someone to write grants. So that one we need to also be more intentional on how to use those funds if we want to go to use grants. There are plenty of grants in infrastructure, plenty. We shouldn't use levy money or debt to fund some of these projects. So that one was the intention. I don't have anything against bikers, because, I receive a lot of emails. Some of them were, nicer than the other ones. I will call it like that. But this was the idea. It's the idea to determine, for me as a mayor right now, I had to be intentional where I put the money, the limited resources that I have in the areas that they are priority for me, and I think they're priority for most of the Fitchburg residents, especially when we talk about the safety of the children, recreation. I know that we have plenty of bike lanes here, that bikers can use those. I think when you use your bike on Welland Road, it's more like it's a choice to bike in those areas. It's recreational, and I agree we had the safety. You talk about the safety of the biker, I'm looking at the safety of the children in the park. So that's it. I know that it was a proven park. It didn't pass Public Works. It didn't pass. What is the other one? Bike committee. I think it's gonna go against all of the value of what you have here in this committee. But I want you to understand from where I am coming from. That's it. I don't have anything against paved shoulder or bike lanes. I need to be resourceful and very intentional how I use the limited sources of money that I have right now.
Steve.
That's it.
Thank you. I just to get this properly in motion,
Yeah.
I'd like to move to approve this resolution.
Okay, so I have Bill and Elizabeth. I just wanted to point out that I didn't cut you off at 3 minutes. Remember that next time I come to the council. All right, we will start out. Does anyone have any questions of clarification for the mayor? And then we'll go to commissioners' discussion. Okay.
I've got a really easy question. Is Kids Crossing what's in McKee?
Yeah.
Okay.
The
The
big
big
one, and it's
yeah.
almost
The
20
big wooden
years old.
one.
Yeah, it's wooden, and there are some nails coming off and some rotten woods
And it is filled with kids all the time. I've noticed that.
It is, I have a 7-year-old and I'm there all the time and it is kind of falling apart. And there are sections missing, that have just been removed because I assume they collapsed or something, and so, it's, it's
All right, so I'll recognize people. Bill, go ahead.
One thought I had is that maybe this, might say this resolution is above our pay grade. We're supposed to be experts and commentators on transportation issues. This is about a trade-off between a transportation priority or transportation desire and other things that are not within our purview. So I feel a little bit funny about even engaging this issue, but that's just a comment.
Yeah, Parks didn't have any problem talking about our paved shoulders. Anyone else?
I would say, I mean, is there, because we just built, or rebuilding Lacey, and that's reopening, and that's basically the same east-west section that you could take now that there is both a bike lane and a multi-use path, correct? So if you wanted to take that, that's available instead of biking on Whalen for that same section.
So, I would like to answer that. I pointed out to the mayor that people who are recreational bikers, who are out for a ride, are going down to Grandview, which was recently repaved by the town of Madison, parallel route. But for a transportation cyclist, that adds 2 miles to your trip if you're on your way to Whalen at Old PB and accessing Liberty Business Park or the south side of Verona. If you go to Lacey, that's 4 miles out of your way, if that's your route. Now, if you're a transportation cyclist, or a recreational cyclist, or an athlete in training looking to put in miles, no problemo. But if that's your daily commute, then it is a problem.
But anyone coming from the north,
Right,
there's no
yes.
bridge.
And
So
anyone coming from the McKee is going to use the Military Ridge Trail. So there are alternative routes, but I'm going to put on my bicycle helmet right now. When you tell someone who is driving an automobile that the intersection of Lacey Road and South Saline Road is going to be closed and they're going to have to do East Sherrill Parkway, no problem. They have to add 2 minutes to their commute. But if you tell a bicyclist that, they're human powered and they are going at 10 miles an hour or 15 miles an hour instead of 25 or 35. And so it's an investment of their own energy and a lot more investment in their time, usually about triple. So going out of your way when you're a transportation cyclist is not something you want to do. And for me, if I'm going to the Military Ridge Trail and I live south of Lacey, I took the old Lacey because I didn't want to go out of my way, even though it had crumbling pavement and no pavement on the shoulders. But most people would just drive. They would not take their bike.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my view on this is, I mean, I support there being bike lanes on Whalen.
Yeah.
Like, I think when we were planning for Lacey, there was an effort by some residents to either get rid of the multi-use path or get rid of the bike lanes in the Lacey reconstruction too, and I think you guys all got emails from me supporting those bike lanes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that this is a question of trade-offs, and like, I have one 7-year-old, she's only gonna use that playground for another couple of years and then she's gonna be done using it, but I mean, that playground is packed all day, every day with kids, and summer camps, and Fitchburg Rec does all their summer camps in that area, and all those kids are going over to that playground every day. I mean, it's just, and from an equity standpoint, I mean, that is a central hub of the entire city, of kids from all over the city coming to play at that playground. So like, well, I kind of agree with Bill that we are not it's not, the transportation position isn't our purview to say like parks are more important than bike lanes on Whalen. It's out of my real scope to say that. I mean, from a personal standpoint, it is. So that's.
Others?
Yeah, so when you say equity, I mean, there is no transit that takes you to McKee Farms Park. So if we're talking about equity, we're talking about people who have the time and car to get there primarily. So the crowd at McKee Farms Park is probably not demographically similar to the city
I
overall.
would completely disagree with that. The crowd at McKee Farms Park
Yeah.
Playground is
Have
extremely
you been
diverse.
there
Incredibly
lately?
diverse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
extremely. My kid, yeah, I mean, we're there all the time. I mean, that is,
Practically
yeah.
talking in Spanish all the time.
It is well connected by bike trails too.
Yeah.
So
And-
I think,
And it seems like those gazebos are constantly rented by all sorts of families that probably can't afford to do fancier birthday parties. So I do think it is used by a vast diversity of people, that whole park, and then kids are always on the playground. Yeah, I would agree that.
Touche. It's also true that kids crossing can be made incrementally safer for very little money, whereas that is not the case for Whalen Road.
the other thing I want to mention is that kids crossing is not a park for all. So if we are gonna do it, we need to do it inclusive. There are a lot of kids that right now, they cannot play in that playground. So, and because I had this conversation with the parks people to fix, you're fixing,
I think we're hearing a little squeak from Jay.
yeah. So they're gonna tell you there is no economically and financially efficient to start patching, fixing, That park is 20 years old, you know what I mean? And the climate condition that suffer every winter is good. It's not like the new material that they can resist, those changes in temperature and, the season, so, I don't know. So this is my 2 cents.
Others?
I struggle with this just because I see the needs for both, and I understand. I've heard a lot from bikers recently through email about the importance of those lanes. I'm not a biker. I would love to bike, but I'm terrified of riding on the street. So the idea of riding on the street without a bike lane is like absolutely horrifying to me.
There are bike lanes, plenty.
So I understand the want for that, but I also understand the need for these park amenities. I hate that we're in this position where we have to pick and choose, like we're sort of forced into that position because of the state laws, like that we can't always make those choices for ourselves. So I struggle with this one a lot, and I certainly don't want anyone getting hurt on Whalen Road. But at the same time, I also don't want kids getting hurt in that playground. So I have a hard time. I'm having a hard time with this one.
I think we don't probably want to wrap up. I would, whereas I think it's a bit out of our jurisdiction to comment on this, I respect the fact that Julia has given this a lot of thought. She deals with a very complicated, large budget, a lot of interest, and I respect the fact that she's come to this decision. I know she doesn't take this lightly. And I instinctively think it's probably the right decision. We're talking about the welfare and recreation of a lot of kids, and some very important facilities in the city, so.
Well, before we close up, I'm going to speak. I have already told the mayor this, but to share it with you, this project is, that is the paved shoulders project, was budgeted for this year, but for the vacancies in Public Works Director and Transportation Engineer, it would have already started. There will be, there could be a motion to do part of these shoulders. I will strongly object to that because there are 8 conflict points when you re-enter the shared lane from the paved shoulder, and we really need to get rid of all of them. There will be still 1 conflict point at Fitchburg Road going westbound, but that's a 4-way stop. And so you're not merging into the lane at speed when you go into the town of Verona where there is a shared lane. So I think we need to eliminate all of those conflict points. I've told the mayor
that I totally support going for the grant writer and applying for grant funding for this. And when that grant comes in, by all means, let's have a budget amendment at that time. But for now, I would like to see the $830,000 stay in the current CIP project so that staff or consultant can go to work on this project and get it planned for 2024 construction. I explained to the mayor that the projects that we and the MPO are working on, Vision Zero, and the high injury network map, will make us eligible for Safe Streets for All grant funding from the US DOT, designed specifically for these kinds of safety projects. When the MPO has done its work with our high injury network map, all around Dane County, all the municipalities will be coordinated with MPO to go after this grant funding for the next biennium. But let's not stop this project now. Let's keep this money here so that we can get this project designed for spring construction. And yes, let's go for those other grants and make a budget amendment if we need to change the source of funds.
May I ask a question? Russ, is it possible to, or would we be able to go after grant funding at this now? Is that something the staff has capacity to work towards?
For the Wayland Road bike lanes, it would likely delay the project from 2024 construction if we were to go after grant funding.
If you were to go after grant funding instead of this funding, you would have to work on the grant?
Correct, yes.
Or because you would be waiting for the grant funding to come in before you started on the...
Most likely we would be waiting for the grant funding to come in.
So that's why I want to keep the money in this CIP project for now. Does anybody else have any questions or clarification before we vote?
Realistically, if you said, okay, starting tomorrow, we'll make it a priority to go after grant funding, what is a realistic timeline for when that grant money might arrive here?
So just as an example, I applied for a TAP grant for the County Highway underpass. That was basically the first thing I did it might have been in February when I got here. We will see that grant money for construction in 2026. For higher priority projects, TAP could fund something sooner.
But that comes in 2-year chunks.
Correct, yes.
Or
It doesn't necessarily mean you'll have to wait for 2 years if you get in at the right end of a cycle, but.
So basically that means if we wait for grant funding for this project by delaying, what we essentially are saying is that if you delay the project by 2 years, you can do both projects by delaying the Wayland Road bike lanes, assuming the grants.
Yeah, as an estimate of
Right,
time,
as an estimate.
yeah. Depends on how
And
WISDOT sees the priority
right.
of its paved shoulders.
Or the MPO, depending on what
Right,
kind of
correct.
grant it is.
When would be the grant deadlines for like that? Would we even be able to apply for the next cycle?
The deadline for TAP grants actually just passed. At the
The
beginning of
deadlines for
October.
all different programs. So you got your surface transportation, you've got your Safe Streets for All, you've got your TAP, you've got Nelson Knowles. I mean, there's different grants for different purposes.
But most of them have deadlines of around this time at the end of the year for the next year or the year after.
So there wouldn't be like, there's not like a spring round of
Some-
TAP grants?
Some there are, but not for TAP grants.
Not for this type of project?
Yeah.
The reason I ask is just because I don't know what this is gonna happen, this resolution at council. I have a feeling about what's gonna happen, but I don't know. But I am curious, like genuinely curious, like if we keep this money, it was budgeted for this year, I assume that we would move on this next year if the money stays. And it sounds like there's not
Well-
enough, there's not enough time to go after grant funding if we continue on. That's what I'm trying to.
Yes, if we were to say, we're not gonna start this project until we get grant funding, then we are definitely in 2025 or later.
Yeah.
If we keep the money and proceed with the design this winter, and we are able to obtain grant funding, then we can have a budget amendment to change the source of funds to the grant.
But the plan would be to do it next year, right? Like,
Yes.
like with that, so like we wouldn't have time to do a grant, basically.
Yeah,
Like-
I'm not following your,
Like,
yeah,
I don't think it's both. Like, if the money stays on this project, we're not
Maybe
getting
not.
grant funding for it,
Maybe,
because it's just not.
maybe that's true.
Yeah.
We could always roll over money in the budget as we did from 2023 into 24 for this project already.
Yes, this
That would
is
be kind of
being
an
rolled over
official
already,
thing, but-
1 year, because
Mhm.
we should be done now.
Yeah.
But then we don't get either project next
Yes.
year.
Yeah.
If we keep it in the Wayland Road fund and roll it over another year.
Yeah, I just don't know. It just sounds like you'd have to delay it in order to go after grant funding. That's what I'm hearing. And I think realistically, that's what we're looking at.
Right.
That's the most realistic.
Elizabeth, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna offer a few, I do live near Wayland and walk down that road and have biked down that road, and I'm very excited about the idea of paved shoulders. I will say I'd go out of my way 2 miles to avoid that hill, so if we could, that said, I do think McKee is like the gem of this city, so it does seem like if we're talking about delaying and going after grant funding, and there isn't as many grant-funded options for the parks, I think that makes sense. And I would just offer the IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure bill have constant new programs coming out. So it is possible that there could be grants open up, like federal grants that could open up before next October.
Does anybody know what a reasonable probability of obtaining a grant is?
Thank you for listening.
Yep,
thank you.
thanks for coming in. Sorry, would you repeat your question?
So if we decide to go for a grant, what is a reasonable probability that we'll actually obtain said grant? I mean, is this a sure thing? Is this like 50-50? Is this worse than that?
I'll take a.
Sure.
I'm working with grants all around the state through the Bike Fed. I would say that if it's the top priority for the city to get a grant for that project, which we have seen is not the case, because there's some question as to whether this park project is more important. But if that was the top priority, we have been very successful in getting grant funds. You know, we got 2 TAP grants in a row. And TAP is something that could be used for that. So I would say, if it's our top priority, we're likely to find something and be able to close the deal. The problem is, what is going to be our top priority? Is it going to be Kids Crossing, or is it going to be the hub, or is it going to be Wayland Road paved shoulders, or what?
So are you saying top priority for the city or for TAP? Because
For the
those
city.
other ones aren't, okay.
For the city.
So-
Whether we say the hub or Kids Crossing is important doesn't matter to the TAP grant approval process, like they're not.
But it does
going
matter to the amount of resources we can put in to apply for grants. I mean, I've been working on a small project compared to this, and I've been collecting funding opportunities, and there are just, they come in all the time, and it's a blur, and you can't apply for them all. And big outfits like Milwaukee County or the city of Madison have staff grant writers that go for multiple grants at the same time. We don't have that kind of capacity.
Is there a way to, with this ARPA grant writer thing, to either as part of this or separately pass something that says we want this to be prioritized from those grant writers? Because apparently there's money here for grant writers.
Right.
I do not know. I don't know what the, so you can't, so the staff takes direction from the city administrator unless the council or the mayor intervene, and they can pass a resolution, say, stop doing this and do that instead. But usually it doesn't come to that. They usually kind of filters down the chain of command. And we don't know if we could pass a motion that says what our preference would be. And that would be advisory to the council and the mayor.
But if I'm correct in saying that your ability to apply for a TAP grant for Wayland Road is not affected by whether we're doing Kids Crossing, correct?
Correct, I would not be the staff person to apply for the
There'd be a
Kids Crossing
different
grant.
staff person.
Right.
But if,
Well, in a different grant, right? You would be applying for
yeah,
TAP.
and for a different program.
But there's a match, would be a match component, right?
Yep, some of these.
Yes, usually TAP, through the MPO, it's 60-40-ish, and if you go through the state, it's 80-20. The lower number is the local share.
Is there an issue that if we do this, will we not be able to come up with the 20?
There's just limited funds, I mean, like, there still are funds in the TIDARPA
Okay.
bank, like, the funds exist. But it's just, there's not enough to do all of the things.
Yeah.
For example, right now, the mayor has proposed $1 million for Kids Crossing, and 50% of it would be from this pot of money, and 50% would be grants from someplace. Now, typically,
Community generated.
foundations and, like the Madison Community Foundation could be approached for something like Kids Crossing, but they would never do a road project. And vice versa, you could get TAP or surface transportation money for a road project, but they would never obviously work on parks.
Yeah.
So, but I think that the local match pool and the amount of time that a grant writer allocates to different projects is a limiting factor for us. Cool.
I think the right way to phrase this is I move the previous question,
Yeah,
which means
you could do that.
if that gets seconded, then we vote on whether to vote on this resolution right now without further discussion. So if somebody will second that.
Well, we might be ready anyway.
can go.
Yeah.
I think we can skip that.
Okay.
Are we ready to vote? Okay, let's have a roll call. I don't have an alphabetical list of us, so I'll go clockwise. Bill?
I vote,
Okay, so our motion is, what was our motion?
to
Approve.
approve resolution
Approve the
R
resolution.
7723.
Okay, your vote.
I vote aye.
Nay.
Aye. Aye.
No. So 4-2? Do I have that right, Ross?
Yes.
Yes. So that passes 4-2. And we are on to the next item. Would recognize Alder Allen. Oh, go ahead, wait.
The next item is the transit study RFP.
Oh, did we say?
No, we
Oh,
moved
no,
to.
we just moved it ahead of the
Sorry.
BRT thing.
Ignore me.
Okay. Jay, do you want to speak to,
Can we make a motion first?
no, we'll do that after the public speaks.
Okay.
You sound like you're 100 miles away, we can barely hear you.
I'm not very close, that's for sure.
Hold
Oh,
on.
hold on, we got tech support here.
Let me try this and see if that works.
Okay, we're working. Stand by, Jay.
Standing. Well, I'm actually standing.
Very sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, we got that muted? No, that's not the problem.
Is there a remote for the TV?
Well, I have been going through this laptop because I don't think those speakers are working, and I think it's something on our end because he was lighting up, but it wasn't coming through earlier.
I see.
I'm lighting up.
Yeah, your little box.
You should have come to meetings
He
when
said he
you're
let-
letting up, I'm not sure what he meant by that exactly.
Well, his camera's off, so we can't tell.
Yeah.
I feel like I should just call Jay and have him talk on the phone.
Just yell really
Old
loud, Jay.
school.
I'm very open to that.
Well, as long as he's coming across loud enough on the speakerphone that it makes its way into the video.
I can put it right by the owl.
I want him to be on camera and watch him.
We could have the co-author, Gabriella,
Yeah, I can speak to it too.
speak to it.
Hey Jay, can you try now?
Can everyone hear this?
Okay, Jay, you're on Gabriella's speakerphone. I think we've got good audio.
Will this work?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, much better,
Okay,
thanks.
great.
For you?
Well, so what's before you is an ordinance to lower the speed on Sherrill Parkway. This would be on the section that runs between the two roundabouts. So basically from Fahey Glen over to Lacey Road. And for those of you who don't know, I'm the alder for that area. And I've had a lot of calls from residents over many years about the speed of traffic on Sherrill Parkway. And after the Quick Trip opened, some of that just increased. So what we want to do, there's a couple of issues specifically that are going on here. One is the overall speed of traffic as the volume has increased. And for those of you who don't know, there's parking that is permitted on one side of Sherrill Parkway. Well, actually, it's permitted on both sides of Sherrill Parkway. And I remember when we approved the Nine Springs neighborhood plan, the hope was that having parking would calm traffic and slow it down, and that doesn't seem to have happened. So one of the byproducts of this is that if you are a pedestrian trying to cross the street and there are parked cars, there's some reduced visibility, so it's difficult to see if a car is coming, and when they're driving at 35 miles an hour, that's a problem in and of itself. The other thing is in between the row houses that are along Sherrill Parkway, there's a couple of driveways that come up from the underground parking. And as those cars are coming up, with other cars parked on both sides, there's really limited visibility. And there's some dramatic situations that happen as a result of that. So, the residents are basically saying, look, this is a residential street. This is just like any other residential street in the city of Fitchburg. It's not designed to be a 35-mile-an-hour road with all these residences on it. So the residents have been asking me to lower it, and I thought a good time to do that would be while the Sherrill Parkway Sign Road intersection is closed, so that when it reopens in a few weeks, that the lower speed limit can be in effect, and hopefully people will take notice of it, and we'll put some signs up that post it at 25 miles an hour, and that will hopefully have an effect that will be positive for the neighborhood.
Thank you, Jay. Any questions for Jay?
We need
Yeah.
a motion.
Well,
We should get a motion.
Yeah,
First, any questions or clarification for Jay?
well, we'll get into it later.
I'll move approval of ordinance 2023-021.
Second.
Okay. Staff report on this?
So we have some traffic data for this section of East Sherrill Parkway. In summer 2023, we had a traffic and speed counter set up at the intersection with South Gardens Way, which I believe is one of the
That's what he was
entrances
talking about.
that
Yep.
Jay was talking
Private
about.
street.
The 85th percentile speed there is exactly 35 miles per hour, which is the speed limit. And the 50th percentile speed is 32 miles per hour. I believe that data plus the design of the street would support lowering the speed limit there.
Okay. Other comments?
Yeah, so Jay, at the council meeting, we approved the 7th addition to the Nine Springs neighborhood, which is gonna have additional construction along Lacey beyond that roundabout, including a new street, Balboa Pass. And that, that construction will go from Sherrill up to Central Park. Should this speed limit reduction extend beyond that roundabout?
Well, the roundabout at Fahey Glen, immediately to the east of that is where Grace is.
I'm talking about the other roundabout.
He's talking about Lacey Road.
Yeah, the other roundabout, there is no road there. Well, that's not true. I guess there is a road there. I don't know what we approved there yet. Honestly, I was just dealing with the resident concerns, so I had not looked at what's going, because right now beyond that roundabout, it's all vacant land.
Right. And in fact, there's 2 outlots that are gonna be right along Lacey Road between Sherrill and Central Park. But there is that, right in the middle of that is gonna be Balboa Pass is gonna go through there. And then I'm assuming that there will be additional traffic generated from that development that'll come down along both Sherrill and Central Park, that could, travel between those 2 roads. And I'm just wondering if we, just say, take this all the way out to Central Park Place instead of stopping at the roundabout at Lacey Road.
Well, I don't have an issue with that. If you want to amend it to do that, I think ultimately the entirety of Uptown is going to be 25 miles an hour. Just because the intensity of the development and the amount of pedestrian and bicycle traffic that we're going to be expecting in that development is going to be pretty intense. So I don't think any of those other roads are going to be 35 miles an hour, and I suspect over time Lacey Road is going to have to be lowered also from 35 to 25.
I think that talking about Lacey and Uptown is very interesting, and I have some things to contribute to that, but I think we should, I'm suggesting that we reserve that for our Vision Zero discussion at such future meeting as we have time for it, since we won't have time for it tonight. So I would suggest that we keep the scope to East Sherrill Parkway.
That'd be my preference too. I think we should just go with what's written and then we can cross that next bridge as we come to it.
Any other comments? I will make one that Ross made an allusion to the speed study for a suggestion I made that should come through staff. And staff has proposed a 2-part before and after speed study and signs being posted to separate the before and after before we propose a resolution or an ordinance that I had drafted. And, or I drafted the code of ordinances, not the enabling ordinance. But from now on, I'm going to just have an alder submit it because it's a lot easier process. And Ross is rolling his eyes because that is not the way engineers like to do things. So I just note that as a former elected official, I totally get Jay responding to his constituents, and I think that this makes engineering sense as well, and I support it. But I'm just thinking, boy, this is the way we want to do it. Is just get a bunch of alders on board and vote it through instead of trying to go through Public Works. All right, any other comments? Seeing none. The motion was to recommend approval to the council. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. I think it's a good idea.
All right, good night.
Good night.
Hi, Jay.
All right, that brings us to 8B, which we will take out of order, and we are running out of time. So our actual item is the transit study RFP. So we have a draft here from staff. Would you like to make any staff comments about the draft? What, in particular, what you'd like to hear from us?
Right, so I had shared this with this commission and asked for comments. That was after the last meeting. I have not received any from anyone. I assume that that doesn't mean that there aren't comments. In fact, one of them, I think I heard from Bill Horns earlier tonight about adding a section in here about coordinating with the BRT, which has kind of always been more in the background of this study, but we can foreground it as well.
Was there also, there wasn't also a suggestion by you, Bill, to coordinate with WISDOT, right? I'm just getting that muddled.
Well, I guess you assume that they will coordinate with any relevant decision-making entity that's out there.
Yep.
BRT came up in the conversation, so.
Yeah.
Specifically, the park and rides with the Beltline PEL study is one that is on my radar.
Yep. And obviously, some of our roads that would be used for transit are county roads, and so we would want, maybe we want an intersection treatment or something. Okay, so are there further input to staff on this RFP, or is it good to go besides that suggestion for coordination?
So the map that we saw tonight showed BRT coming, down to Brendan, south of McKee, whereas this is the older map that shows the loop in Cahill, Maine. Do you want to, is it appropriate to put that updated map in there, or was that?
This is the current map, I think.
This is,
That's
there.
Yeah, that's the Route B
Okay.
map.
Yeah, that's not the BRT, that's.
So that, what we saw tonight wouldn't happen until 27.
Correct, yes.
And I am sure that we are looking for feasible solutions that could come in sooner than
Yeah.
that.
Yes, right.
Although, one solution to the connection of the rest of the city to the civic campus is clearly getting the BRT down here. So
I suspect that will be in whatever
that will be
study we
in,
get out of this.
that will be in here, yeah.
I do wonder if they could even extend that bus route B down to McKee Road, Trevorton Pike. I didn't realize that was something they would even consider until we talked about this, but I was
Yes.
like, that would not be as expensive as
That is
bringing it down
what
to this.
always I have been, in my years of the Transportation and Transit Commission and the council, I've always promoted extending metro service because we say we want this frequency and these hours and these dates and there's a dollar sign and you're good to go. Whereas some of these other ideas like buy a bus, hire a person to drive it, brings us into all new areas that the city of Fitchburg doesn't have any existing capabilities for. I mean, if we wanted to do this, it could start in the December, it could start in the December one, but it could start in the spring adjustment period. And, when the drivers bid for routes twice a year, I believe, in the spring and in August for the fall. And so it's a very flexible solution. All it takes is money. Whereas some of the other options here do bring the city into new lines of business that, Misty Dodge will be wringing her hands about.
So if we are good with this, with the exception of adding those things that we discussed,
As amended.
what's the next step? Ross, you just amend this and send it out, or?
Yes, basically. That's just a draft. You guys are the only ones besides the rest of Public Works that have even seen it. So make the changes and I can put it up on Quest CDN for proposals.
Do you think that 25,000 is sufficient?
I think we will get different studies with different levels of funding. $25,000 will get us basically a recommendation and a few pages supporting that recommendation, whether that.
And options.
Right,
I mean,
yes.
they'll inventory a couple of options that are feasible.
Exactly, but they'll stick very closely to whatever's in the RFP for that amount. They're not gonna go out of their way to drum up a creative solution.
There'll be fiscal estimates.
If we go after grant funding for this, we'll get a more detailed study that will help this commission and council make a decision. But that depends on what you guys would want to see for timing of this study and whether we feel that more, or whether you guys feel that more detail would actually be helpful in making that decision.
Sometimes I worry that we are spending a lot of money to get some kind of confirmation of what on the surface we can look at and make our own choice and get somebody else to say the same thing. I worry that I would like this to be more than that. So that might require more money. If it requires grant writing, we've already talked about that kind of time frame. So I guess this is what's in the budget, so. Is that right? I mean, this is budgeted in that resolution.
Yeah, and that request for proposal is written with that $25,000 amount in mind.
It seems like this is already funded. It might be better to go forward with it, because whatever report they come up with could help the folks trying to get federal funding, right? They could supplement their grant for the BRT with a study that says it would be very useful, look at all of these people that would benefit from having transit here. Whereas if we wait for more funding, for a more detailed report, we might miss timelines.
I like that idea.
Yeah, speed versus thoroughness, it's like always like,
Yeah.
we've been waiting on this a long time just because of the, with vacancies in the department,
If we
so.
wait for a grant, you probably have to update that map for the BRT. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2026.
Maybe just going
So,
forward might be better.
let's have a motion to accept this as amended and have staff proceed.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right, any further discussion on that idea? You know what the amendment is, Ross? To add coordination with appropriate jurisdictions that we know about Metro. All right, seeing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. All right, we are done with 8B. I think that it is time to revisit the agenda because we are past our normal quitting time. I do want to go into 8A at a minimum to discuss what we should do with our next meeting. It sounds like we could all come at 5:30 and go through the storyboards, give our individual ideas, and then come back and meet at our regular time of 6:30, even while they continue down in the council chambers. And if we put North-South BRT, we can discuss this document, which I will not put in the next month's packet again, and such suggestions that we want, like staff to transmit to Metro based on what we learned tonight and what we will learn next month. So does that seem like a good way forward, or do people have a different idea that they would like to propose?
No, I have a question. Are we expecting the agenda for next month to be big, have a lot of stuff in it, or?
We never know, but I would expect that we will get such development projects as may pop up onto Gabriella's radar screen. And,
The things that couldn't be postponed to the next month, to December.
We probably are not gonna meet in December, cause we're only,
No.
we only get 10 meetings per year.
Unless we delayed.
Well, unless,
I'm unable to attend in November, I have a prior work commitment that,
I'm sorry,
I'm unable to attend the November meeting.
okay.
I have a prior work commitment that was before I joined this commission, so.
would it make sense to just not, to have November be our buy and meet in December and just use the time in November to go to this hearing and learn?
Yes, that is certainly,
Does the item that you had in that get?
For the NTMP changes, that would delay those changes until a December council meeting.
Unless we decided not to take it up as a commission.
Going to the committee of the whole, and that's basically what it is, right, was that stuff. I watched the committee of the whole when Tim and Ross presented it to the council. And I think it's an excellent proposal. It advances equity and gives staff more flexibility to suggest Vision Zero projects as well as other kinds of projects. So I support it. Maybe when the thing comes up that you can relate that we discussed it briefly tonight, don't refer it to us and put it in your staff report for December as to what happened. Does that sound crazy?
Not super crazy.
Well, it is exactly the kind of policy thing that I was envisioning this commission taking on. So the other thing is that we could meet without Gabriella, and you will see it at the council.
Yeah, that's fine by me.
And we could meet for, well, then we're canceling December, so I don't know.
I'd like to say something about that
Yes.
date. If we did not have this meeting, part of my staff function would be to attend that whole meeting.
So it doesn't save you any time?
Well, I'm just saying,
Okay.
there probably won't be that many people at the last hour of that, but it might be useful to have more staff there as well. Just the point I just wanted to throw out.
Okay, so you're arguing that that's a reason to skip.
Right.
Okay. All right. I'd like to hear a motion either to have a meeting next month or to skip next month.
I would move to skip next month.
Is there a
So that we
second?
can devote our full attention to the BRT
Is there a second?
discussion.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? I think we've had some good discussion, but does anybody have any further comments? All right, seeing none, the motion is to take a break next month, and I would request all commissioners who can to come to that other meeting, but it's not required, of course. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, our next meeting will be then in the second Thursday in December 14th. Okay,
Can I ask, the attachment that it seems like is that, had a lot of, online, the one that was on the agenda, at least for me, I don't know if anybody else said it, was really grainy. Is there a better, like electronic version?
you know what I
Yeah.
did is I did a reduce PDF size, so maybe,
So maybe do it.
here's what I'll do, I will send out, I'm starting to get more comfortable with this, I'll send out, with all of you blind copied, I'll send to Ross, and I'll say in the message that everybody is getting, all the commissioners are getting this, I'll send the link to the original. And then you can open it in as big a monitor you want, and you'll be able to see it.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. I have a 4K TV that I use for monitor, it's really great. All right, so I would like a motion to defer the rest of our South BRT discussion and our Vision Zero discussion to December.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we don't have any other announcements. Does anybody want to put anything on the agenda for the future?
I wanted to ask if someone wanted to make a motion to not get the NTMP changes referred to this council,
Sure,
this commission.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, I can move that.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right, so all in favor of not getting the neighborhood traffic management program changes that staff will suggest to council refer to us, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, you have it. All right, I'd like to be, I mailed to all of you, this is by way of an announcement, I mailed to all of you the slides that Elizabeth and I presented to the council, and we can, if you have any questions on any of those, we'll just talk about them under the Vision Zero agenda item next time, along with that webinar that I suggested that we all watch for our educational efforts.
That webinar wouldn't load for me, I had to download it. So if you have that problem, if anybody has that problem, after like the 4-minute mark, it was spinning and I had to
Yeah,
download
the third
it.
device I tried.
Okay.
Yeah, just keep pulling up new devices and trying it, and it will eventually work.
But you can download from Vimeo, that works
Okay.
for me, and then I just watched it.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. We are adjourned. Thank you, FACT.